Last week we talked about the smartest way to pay off your debt, which may seem counterintuitive given this week's title. But while that is still extremely relevant and great information, if I do say so myself, there's really an even smarter way to use that money. This week we're going to talk about why you shouldn't pay off all your debt. How investing in your 20s and 30s is far more important than being debt-free. And I'll prove it to you. So last week we talked about how using the avalanche method to pay off debt is the absolute smartest and quickest way to become debt-free. That's great and all if the entire goal is to become debt-free. But what if the bigger picture goal is to become financially independent? To do the smartest overall money move instead of just Dave Ramseying the situation? Don't get me wrong, Dave Ramsey has clearly made quite a name for himself in the financial world, but the dude is debt-ophobic. Dave Ramsey will never encourage debt. Anyway, I highly encourage anyone and everyone to pay off your debt, but there's a point where the opportunity cost of not investing is greater than the payoff of paying off your debt. That was a lot of words. Let's look at a graph. Gurus like Dave Ramsey want you to be debt-free, and that's all well and good. Always, always, always pay off your high interest rate debts like credit cards first. But where you should draw the line is where your investment's potential interest rate exceeds your debt's interest rates. For this example, let's say you draw the line at 6%. That means pay off all your debt for any loan whose interest rate is 6% or higher. Once you've done that, continue to pay the minimums on those lower interest rate debts, but take any remainder of your budget and invest that instead. So for example, let's say that you're completely debt-free except for your student loans, which have an interest rate of 5%. You make the minimum payments and invest anything left over into an index fund that earns 8%. Now you can use that fancy college degree to subtract 5 from 8 to figure out that you're netting a 3% gain. It doesn't take a college grad to figure out that 3% is better than no percent. Sure, you're still paying interest to the man on your student loans, but you're profiting more than he is. Now there are pros and cons to every money move, and this one is no different. The only reason this wouldn't work is if there was some sort of terrible market crash, but when's the last time that happened? By paying off debt at a known interest rate, you're getting what's called a guaranteed rate of return. You know by paying off a 5% loan that you're getting a 5% rate of return because you're avoiding paying that 5% in the future. However, that 8% in our example is a hypothetical rate of return.
Past performance does not guarantee future results.
So theoretically, if the market tanked, so would your investments, in which case you'd get far less than 8%, maybe even in the negatives, and you would have been better off just paying off your loans at that guaranteed rate of return. But that's what the lame bears want you to believe. That would all be true, but listen to Uncle Travis for a second. It is far more important to invest in your 20s and 30s than it is to be debt-free. Check this out. Here's how much power time has on your money. $1 invested in your 20s is equal to $21 in retirement. That same dollar in your 30s only equals $10 in retirement. In your 40s, that $1 equates to a little under $5, and in your 50s, that $1 barely doubles. The most powerful tool for your retirement savings is time. Time in the market is better than timing the market. And if you're focused on guaranteeing yourself some negligible return as opposed to risking much higher long-term gains, you're leaving money on the table. You're settling for a 5 when you could be hitting a 10%. We're still talking about interest rates. If you guys want to see specific numbers about investing versus paying off debt, let me know in the comments, but it doesn't take a mathematician to figure this out. As long as your investments yield a higher return than your debt's interest rate, you're in the green. Now, some people are undoubtedly going to say that 8% is too much to expect in the market, even though on average the S&P 500 has earned 8% over the past 60 years. But I digress. An equal amount of people are going to say that you can get way more than 8%. And the only thing that those two types of people have in common is they have no friggin' clue what the market's going to do. No one does. So ultimately, you have to decide where you're going to draw that line. Personally, I drew my debt versus investment line at 5% because I feel very confident that I can make more than that with my particular investments. It's also important to note that you should absolutely have an emergency fund of at least 6 months worth of expenses saved up before you try this. If you do, then there's way less to worry about in investing and in life. As always, don't be an idiot. Do your research before making any sort of aggressive money moves. Your decisions are yours alone, but ultimately think twice before focusing on just paying off low interest debts just to be debt free, because you could be leaving money on the table. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to tell YouTube that you hated the video, and Please don't ever come back here again. Really.